Now continuing with the part 4. In this video, we will start from monogenic type 1 diabetes mellitus. Okay. Classic single gene defect are an extremely rare cause of autoimmune mediated type 1 diabetes mellitus. IPEX, that is immune dysfunction, polyendocrinopathy, enteropathy, X-linked syndrome, is caused by pathogenic variants in the FOXP3 and other genes. The FOXP3 gene is involved in the immune system responses. Okay, a member of the Fox protein family, FOXP3, appears to function as the master regulator in the development and function of the regulatory T cells. Okay, so FOXP3, a member of the FOXP3 protein family, FOXP3 appears. This is what it is the master regulator in what development and function of regulatory T cells. These variants lead to the lack of major population of the regulatory T lymphocytes with resulting overwhelming autoimmunity and development of diabetes as early as 2 days of age in approximately 80% of the children in this disorder with this disorder. So what is happening is there is a lack of what T regulatory lymphocytes, which result in overwhelming autoimmunity and development of diabetes in uh, as early as 2 days of age, maybe in approximately 80% of the children. Fine. Wolfram syndrome, that is DIPMOD, diabetes insipidus, diabetes mellitus, optic atrophy, and deafness. This is the Wolfram syndrome. What is included is did DIPMOD, diabetes insipidus, diabetes mellitus, optic atrophy, and deafness. It is an autosomal recessive disease caused predominantly by pathogenic variants of the WFS1 and is progressive neurodegenerative disease. Case definition requires the presence of type 1 diabetes mellitus and optic atrophy. So these two must be present. This syndrome may be present in about 5% of the patients with type 1 diabetes mellitus. Okay, so what must be present with the type 1 diabetes mellitus? Optic atrophy. Autoimmune polyendocrinopathy syndrome, that is APS1, is caused by pathogenic variants of the AIRE leading to abnormalities in the expression of peripheral antigens within the thymus or abnormalities of the negative selection in the thymus. So there is disorder, something wrong with the thymus. This results in the widespread autoimmunity. Approximately 80% of the children with this syndrome develop type 1 DM. Okay, APS1, 18% children develop what? Type 1 DM. Fine. Genes altering the risk of autoimmune type 1 diabetes mellitus. Let's look at these. The risk of developing type 1 diabetes mellitus is modified by the influence of several risk loci. The genomic region with by far the greatest contribution to the risk of type 1 diabetes mellitus is the major histocompatibility complex on the chromosome number 6p21. This has the greatest contribution in risk of increasing the risk of type 1 DN, that is MHC, on the chromosome number 6p21. Outside of the MHC, genome wide association studies have identified type 1 DM to be associated with at least 100 different single nucleotide polymorphism, from which 50 genes have emerged as potential causal. Notable high-risk loci include INS, PTPN22, IL2RA, CTL, CTLA4, and IFIH1, ERBB3, and BAD. These are all the high-risk loci. Okay. The contribution of each non-MHC locus to type 1 diabetes mellitus risk is small, making individual variants less useful for predicting the genetic risk of the type 1 diabetes mellitus patient. The known function of these genes suggesting the primary etiologic pathways of the diabetes, namely HLA class 2 and class 1 molecules binding T cells and the beta cell activation, innate pathogen viral response, and chemokine and cytokine signaling, and T regulatory and antigen presenting cell functions. Now coming to major histocompatibility complex and the human leukocyte antigen encoded susceptibility to type 1 diabetes mellitus. We are going to read about this MHC and HLA susceptibility to type 1 diabetes mellitus. Okay. MHC is a large genomic region that contains number of genes related to immune system function in the human. It is what? It is a genomic region, large genomic region, which has genes related to what? Immune system function. These genes are further divided into HLA classes 1, 2, 3, 4. Class 2 genes are the ones most strongly associated with the risk of type 1 DM. Okay, which are strongly associated class 2 genes most strongly associated with the risk of type 1 DM. But some of the risk associated with the HLA types is a result of variation in the genes in the HLA classes other than the class 2. Fine. Overall, genetic variation in the HLA region can explain 40 to 50% of the genetic risk of type 1 DM. Fine. So there is a genetic risk of type 1 DM, 40 to 50% can be explained by genetic variation in the HLA region only. Some of the known association include the HLA DR3 and 4 and DQ2 and 8 genotype compared to a population prevalence of type 1 DM of approximately 1 in 300. DR3, 4 and DQ2, 8 newborns from the general population have 1 in 20 genetic risk. The normal population has approximately 1 in 300, but these containing patients have 1 in 20. The risk of development of, so we should remember this, right? They are high risk. These are the HLA DR3, 4 and HLA DQ2, 8 are high risk genotype. Now what? From here, the risk of the development of the type 1 diabetes mellitus is even higher when the high risk HLA haplotypes are shared with a sibling or parent with the type 1 diabetes mellitus. Okay. If one sibling has type 1 diabetes mellitus and shares the same risk DR3, 4, DQ28 haplotype with another sibling, the risk of autoimmunity in the other sibling is around 50% if these genes are being shared. Moreover, the risk approaches 80% when the siblings share both the HLA haplotypes identical by descent. Okay, if these HLA haplotypes are identical, then the risk approaches to approximately 80% in siblings. This is known as the relative paradox and points to the existence of other shared genetic factors. This is the relative paradox. So basically, this relative paradox refers to the observation that even siblings share identical high-risk HLA types like DR3, DR4, DQ28. The risk of developing type 1 diabetes mellitus is not 100%. Okay, this indicates that factors beyond HLA, such as other genes and environmental triggers, they also play a very important role in the disease development. Fine. Now let's move ahead. With the advantages in the genotyping, further discrimination is possible and we can identify more specific risk ratios for specific haplotypes. For example, I'm not going to read this. Let's move ahead. Role of aspartate at position 57 in DQB1. DQB1030 is high risk for diabetes. I think I should read the last line at least. The DR2 haplotype is dominantly protective and is present in 20% of the general population but is seen only in the 1% patients with the diabetes, type 1 diabetes. There is something protective also. DR2 haplotype is protective. Okay. Now moving to this. DQB1030 is a high risk for diabetes, differs from the DQB10301 which is protective against diabetes only at position 57 where it lacks an aspartic acid. So this one lacks the aspartic acid. Okay. The DQB102001 allele increased risk for diabetes also lacks the aspartic acid at 57 at position 57. So high risk, the genes which are high risk, no, this one and this one, they both lack aspartic acid at position 57, and it has been proposed that the presence of aspartate at this position alters the protein recognition and protein binding characteristics of this molecule. Although the absence of aspartate at this position appears to be important in most studies on the white individual, it does not have the same role in the Korean and Japanese population. Moreover, certain low-risk DQB1 genotypes also lack the aspartic acid at position 57, including the DQB10200302, DQB10201, DR7, and I'm not going to read this. Thus, the presence of aspartate at this position is usually, but not always, protective in white population, but not necessarily in the other population. Ah, I don't think this was of much use, but okay. Let's move ahead. Role of HLA class 1. Though the alleles of class 2 HLA genes appear to have strong association with the diabetes, recent genotyping studies and analysis of the pool data have identified association with the other elements in the HLA complex, especially HLA-A, HLA-B. The most significant association is with the HLA-B39, which confers high risk for the diabetes, high risk for type 1 DM. In three populations, makes up the majority of the signal form HLA-B and is not associated with the lower age of onset of the disease. What was important here was this HLA-B39 confers high risk for type 1 DM. That's it. Moving ahead, non-MHC HLA genes associated with the type 1 diabetes mellitus risk are the second locus found to be associated with the risk of type 1 DM was localized to a region upstream of the INS. Susceptibility in this region has been primarily mapped to variable number of the tandem repeats, approximately 500 base pairs upstream of the insulin gene. This highly polymorphic region consists anywhere from 30 to several hundred repeats of a 14 to 15 base pair unit sequence. This is the sequence. The high-risk allele has been found to be associated with lower insulin and messenger RNA production in the thymus, suggesting a possible mechanism for described immune tolerance to insulin. So, okay, so there is mechanism for decreased immune tolerance to insulin. A number of candidate genes linked to the type 1 diabetes mellitus susceptibility have also been associated with the increased risk of other autoimmune disease. These include the genes PTPN22, IL2RA, CTLA4, IFIH1, which are involved in the immune system regulation. Others, such as the ERBB3 and BAD, are thought to be associated with the cell apoptosis. Okay. So what was here was some genes which are linked to type 1 DM also have been associated with other autoimmune diseases. Other autoimmune diseases like celiac or something related to thyroid, autoimmune thyroiditis, that is Hashimoto's, like that. Okay. Now coming to the environmental factors, that 45 to 70% of the monozygotic twins are discordant for type 1 DM. The variation seen in the urban and rural areas populated by the same ethnic group, the change in the incidence that occurs with the migration, the increase in the incidence that has been seen in almost all population in the last few decades, and the occurrence of seasonality all provide evidence that environmental factors also play a role in the causation of type 1 DM. This all was just to prove this line that environmental factors play a significant role in causation of the type 1 DM. First, environmental factors, starting with the viral infections. It is possible that various viruses play a role in the pathogenesis of the type 1 DM, but no single virus and no single pathogenic mechanism stands out in the environmental etiology of the type 1 DM. Instead, a variety of viruses and mechanisms may contribute to the development of diabetes in genetically susceptible hosts. Invoked mechanism involve direct infections of the beta cells by viruses, resulting in the lysis and release of the self-antigen, direct viral infection of the antigen-presenting cells, causing increased expression of the cytokines and molecular mimicry, which is the notion that the viral antigens exhibit homology of the self isotopes, epitopes. Sorry. So basically, this was viral antigens exhibit. There is a homology to self epitopes, that is the epitopes present in the humans. Due to this molecular mimicry shown by the viruses, there may be lysis. Okay, lysis and release of self antigens. So, due to the molecular mimicry, all this happens. The clearest evidence of the role for viral infection in the human type 1 diabetes mellitus is seen in congenital rubella syndrome. Okay, what is seen in congenital rubella syndrome? Prenatal infection with the rubella is associated with beta cell autoimmunity in about 70%, with development of type 1 DM in 40% of the infected children. So, if before the birth of the child, the mother is infected with rubella and the baby is infected, prenatal infection with the rubella is associated with, there is beta cell autoimmunity in about 70%, and there is development of type 1 diabetes mellitus in 40% of the infected children. So this was a proof for viral infection causing type 1 DM. The time lag between the infection and the development of diabetes may be as large as 20 years. Okay. The type 1 diabetes mellitus after congenital rubella syndrome is more likely in patients who carry the higher risk genotypes. Okay, that the genotypes that we read before. Interestingly, there appears to be no increase in risk of diabetes when the rubella infection develops after birth or when the live virus rubella immunization is used. Fine. So this was like prenatal infection only affecting and increasing the risk of type 1 DM. If the infection by rubella is occurring after the birth or when the live virus vaccination is given, then it doesn't affect. Then it doesn't increases the risk of type 1 DM. Okay. Studies have shown that an increase in the evidence of enteroviral infection in patients with a type 1 DM and increased prevalence of enteroviral RNA in the prenatal blood samples from the children who subsequently developed type 1 DM. This was just that only, that there was enteroviral RNA in the prenatal blood samples of the children. Fine. It has been reported that the mumps infection leads to leads to what? Development of beta cell immunity with high frequency and to type 1 diabetes mellitus in some cases. Although mumps may play a role in some cases, the fact that the type 1 diabetes mellitus incidence has increased steadily in the several countries after universal mumps vaccination was introduced and the incidence is extremely low in several populations where mumps is still prevalent indicates that the mumps alone is not a major causal factor in diabetes. They just talk shit here. What they said was, in type 1 diabetes mellitus incidence has increased in several countries where after this universal mumps vaccination. Fine, but they also said that the incidence is extremely low in several populations where mumps infection is still prevalent. So what they said initially, they contradicted later, and later said that mumps alone is not a major causal factor. Fine, this was all the waste. No need to read this. Let's move ahead. The hygiene hypothesis, possible protective role of infections. Let's see. So, in environmental factors, what we read first was viral infection. This is the second heading that we are going to read about is the hygiene hypothesis. Although some viral infections may increase the risk of type 1 diabetes mellitus, infectious agent may also play a protective role against diabetes. Earlier, we saw that viral infection was increasing the risk of type 1 DM. Here, we are seeing that infectious agent play protective role against this diabetes. Let's see how. The hygiene hypothesis states that type 1 diabetes mellitus risk is increased in industrialized countries where the observation that there are fewer infection implies that the immune system is less well trained, right? Due to less infection, the immune system will be less well trained for its main task, namely host defense. Some call this theory the microbial deprivation hypothesis, that the children are overprotected and they don't get enough infection exposure or exposure to antigens, various antigens. This is the microbial deprivation hypothesis. The hygiene hypothesis states that the lack of exposure to childhood infection may increase the individual chances of developing autoimmune disease, including the type 1 diabetes mellitus. The rates of the type 1 diabetes mellitus and the other autoimmune disorders are generally lower in underdeveloped nations with a high prevalence of childhood infections. Fine, this is a a positive point of being underdeveloped nation, that as the children have higher prevalence of childhood infections, so they tend to increase in these countries, become more developed. So there is more chances of this autoimmune disorders like type 1 DM. Okay, in underdeveloped countries. The incidence of the type 1 diabetes mellitus differs almost sixfold between Russian Carolina and Finland, even though both are populated by genetically related populations and are adjacent to each other and at the same latitude. The incidence of autoimmunity in the two populations varies inversely with the immunoglobulin IgE antibody levels, and the IgE is involved in response to the parasitic infestation. All these observations suggest that decreased exposure to certain parasites and other microbes in the early childhood may lead to increased risk of autoimmunity later in life. So, this decreased exposure to certain parasites leads to increased risk of autoimmunity in later life. Nonetheless, retrospective case control studies have been equivocal at best, and direct evidence of protection by childhood infection is still lacking. Then why are they writing in this such a standard book if the evidence is still lacking? Let's move ahead. We read about the hygiene hypothesis. Now we are going to read about the gastrointestinal microbiome. Starting with this gastrointestinal biome, there is emerging evidence that the intestinal microbiome is altered in type 1 diabetes mellitus. There's just an emerging evidence. Okay, the intestine, the microbiome which is present in the intestine, if it is altered, then it is emerging evidence, then it can cause or it is a risk factor for type 1 DM. However, a cause and effect relationship has yet to be established. Human studies have found that the intestinal microbiome in type 1 diabetes mellitus has decreased diversity of microbial species and contains fewer butyrate producing organism compared to the healthy controls. Butyrate is a short chain fatty acid that is thought to be anti-inflammatory and may have role in protecting the intestinal epithelium either directly or indirectly through an effect to increase the mucin production. Theoretically, a disruption in the epithelial integrity, the so-called leaky gut, could trigger inflammation. If there is epithelial integrity disruption, it can cause this leak and trigger the inflammation and enhance the autoimmune response because of this increased entry of the pathogenic or the dietary antigens into the bloodstream. Early small-scale prospective studies in the infants and children at high risk of type 1 diabetes mellitus have shown an imbalance favoring species including Bacteroid doris and Bacteroid vulgatus among the individuals who went on to develop the type 1 diabetes mellitus autoantibodies or disease compared with those who did not. So, in some individuals, not individual, small scale prospective studies in infants and children who were at high risk of type 1 diabetes mellitus, they show some imbalance in the intestinal species, and they showed Bacteroid doris and this vulgatus, and later on they developed type 1 DM or disease. Okay, a larger study across the six different studies in the environmental determinants of the diabetes in the young study identifies significant geographic differences in the fecal microbiome composition, highlighting the challenges in the field of study. What this paragraph meant was something different in the microbiome from the normal can also increase the risk of type 1 DM. That's it. Let's move ahead to diet. This was our third heading. Fourth one is the diet, and this is the last one. After this, we'll end this video. Dietary exposure may modify the type 1 diabetes mellitus risk. A definitive link between any single dietary exposure and type 1 diabetes mellitus development has not been found. The majority of interventional studies have not shown an effect of delayed gluten exposure or the use of hydrolyzed formula to reduce the risk of development of type 1 diabetes mellitus autoantibodies of disease have not shown anything. So that till whatever we read, it was not significant. A meta-analysis of both the interventional and observational studies concluded that there was no association between early exposure of gluten or milk protein and the risk of the type 1 DM. So if there is no association, why are they writing it, man? Just increasing the content. Some but not all studies have suggested that the breastfeeding lowers the risk of type 1 diabetes. This is a good point. But not all studies. Okay. Some studies have suggested this. The potential mechanism for a protective effect of the breast milk is not well understood but could be related to beneficial effect of breast milk on the infant immune system or an indirect effect such as the reduced exposure to other dietary antigens early in the life. Fine. So this was a point that breast milk increases the immunity, infant immunity, right? And it also reduces the exposure of other dietary antigens early in the life, hence protecting from the child from the type 1 DM in future. Timing of the solid food introduction may modify the type 1 DM risk, as seen in the reports from the diabetes autoimmunity study in the young, that is DAISY, which found that both early, before 4 months of age, and late after 6 months of age, introduction of the solid food predicted development of type 1 diabetes. But in India, we are told to start the food after 6 months. So this was like the when we introduced the solid food, it also can modify type 1 DM risk. This was something different. Found that both early before 4 months and late after 5 months. So we you have to introduce between 4 to 6 according 4 to 6 months. Introduce what solid food in child. Okay. Other dietary factors have suggested at various times as playing role in the type 1 diabetes mellitus risk include what is right. Dietary factors have been suggested at various times as playing a role in type 1 DM risk. These also increase the risk of type 1 DM. Omega 3 fatty acid, vitamin D, ascorbic acid, zinc, vitamin E. These are all good, no? Why is it increasing the risk of type 1 DM? Vitamin D is biologically plausible as it has role in immune regulation, and deficiency is more common in the northern countries like Finland where the type 1 DM incidence is highest. However, most observational studies have failed to find association between the vitamin D levels or the supplementation and type 1 diabetes mellitus risk. Interventional studies to assess the effect of the type 1 DM supplementation on type 1 diabetes mellitus are lacking. Okay, but somehow vitamin D deficiency and the type 1 diabetes mellitus, they are all interlinked, and yeah, that's it. This pathogenesis and natural history of type 1 diabetes will be dealt in next video. Thank you.